Hi everybody, my name is Sasha Reyes and I'm a personal chef in the Phoenix metropolitan area. I lead a team of all women chefs at my company, Artisan Personal Chefs, which has been in business for the last 9 years. I'm so excited to be joining you today. We're gonna have a fabulous Italian meal for you that's gonna really impress your guests without putting you out. We're gonna get started with the bruschetta. We're gonna move on to our entree, which is a really lovely piece of salmon served with one of my absolute favorites, risotto. And then, of course, the best part, dessert. Stay tuned for a delicious raspberry tiramisu. All right, so for our main event today, we are going to be preparing a delicious salmon dish with pesto sauce, creamy Parmesan risotto, and some seasonal zucchini. So this is really a wonderful summertime recipe that you can share with your guests, really impress them, and not go too far out of your way in doing it. So let's get started, guys. All right, guys, the first thing we're gonna be working on today is a really delicious bruschetta. So this is featuring some of the best flavors of the summer, some lovely fresh tomatoes, arugula, we're gonna do bacon. It's gonna be kind of a mashup of a BLT. The first thing you need to do is just drizzle your crostini with a little bit of olive oil, and then we're gonna toss that in the oven. You want your oven preheated to 350 degrees before you put that crostini bread in there. And then we're gonna go ahead and brown some bacon in a pan. I like mine really nice and crispy. You do it how you like. Okay guys, so we did cook our bacon till it's nice and crispy and then set it down on a plate lined with a paper towel just to allow that to drain. We're gonna go ahead and grab that bread out of the oven. So again, this is one of those recipes, it's gonna really impress your guests without putting you out of your way. Find a nice little board or a plate for you to serve your bruschetta. And we're gonna just stick our bread on here like so. All right. We didn't quite find a home for that guy, that's okay. So again, this is sort of a play on a BLT, an elevated BLT. I'm gonna take a little bit of lemon juice, I'm gonna squeeze that into our arugula here. That's gonna give it a little bit of acid. Arugula can be a little bit bitter, and so it is important that we incorporate acid here. So if you don't have lemon and you want to use vinegar instead, go ahead and do that. Not too much, but it is going to help cut the bitterness of the greens by using a little bit of acid, some salt, and olive oil. About a tablespoon. We're going to throw in some of these really lovely cherry tomatoes here. Kind of just toss that around. Then the last part, the bacon, the best part, right? That goes in there as well. So you get all this sort of mixed up together here and then transfer it right on over into your bread. So you may want to take a few minutes to stylize this here and just make it look nice for your company. You can do really anything on bruschetta. I say it's almost like a canvas, right? So I like to change up the recipe seasonally. Again, this one is really summery and fresh. I also like to do watermelon and feta this time of year. So if you've got some watermelon and you wanna toss that on a piece of bruschetta with feta. That's also gonna really impress your guests. It's just a really bright, wonderful flavor. This is applewood smoked bacon. Again, I cooked it until it's nice and crispy. And the arugula is gonna be a little bit peppery, a little bit bitter, but we've got these nice sweet tomatoes here that's gonna offset and balance that. And that salty, crispy, yummy applewood bacon. All right, so we've put our finishing touches on our bruschetta and we're ready to serve this to our guests. We can leave this or we can serve it straight away. We're gonna go ahead and get started on our entree. We're gonna make a really delicious pesto here with this beautiful fresh basil. It's gonna go into the blender. I've got about 2 cups of fresh basil here. It's okay if we have some of the stems on there, but if you have any of those tough woody stems, you do wanna go ahead and remove the leaves from those stems. I've also got a cup of arugula. It's not traditional to pesto to have arugula in here, but I like to add it because it does have that peppery taste to it and it gives it a really wonderful essence in our pesto. It also helps to add a little bit of body in there as well. So the next thing is going to be our olive oil. Now guys, please don't get nervous here. You are gonna add in quite a bit of olive oil in this dish, and that's totally fine. It's supposed to be that way. So right now we've got a 1/2 cup, and we're gonna do about another 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. So quite a bit of olive oil here, guys, but remember this is a sauce, so we're gonna use it relatively sparingly in our dish. So don't get nervous or scared about using olive oil. And I do recommend you use a good quality extra virgin olive oil. The better the quality of the olive oil, the better your overall product is gonna taste. So fresh ingredients makes a really fresh, delicious meal. Moving on, we're gonna put in about 2 cloves worth of minced garlic. I recommend you use fresh. Don't get that stuff in the jar that's been sitting in, I don't know what they put that stuff in, but don't do that. Definitely use fresh. Okay, guys? And then we're gonna sprinkle in some sea salt here. That's gonna go right in there. Delicious. About a tablespoon. Again, this is a sauce, so you want it to be really flavorful. We're gonna get a lemon. If it has any seeds protruding from it, go ahead and pick those guys out. Get rid of those. And then we're gonna juice this lemon. So we need the juice of 1 lemon. Again, this isn't exactly traditional to most pesto recipes, but it's something that I feel really brightens the pesto itself, and especially when it's served with fish, you know, lemon is quite delicious in addition to that. This is a nice sauce to have on hand, and so even if you don't use all of it in today's recipe, it's something that's gonna keep in your refrigerator for a little while, and then you can go back to it and find new ways of using it, whether you're adding it to a charcuterie board, a little bit of pasta, or maybe just scooping it onto some eggs or something like that. It's always a delicious thing to have in your kitchen. So we went ahead and we juiced that. I'm gonna pour that in there. I've also got a 1/4 cup of pine nuts here. You can toast these in advance. That will bring out more of their nuttiness, their natural nuttiness. But for today's recipe, we're just gonna go ahead and use the pine nuts as is. There is some conflict out there. Some people prefer to use walnuts for this dish, but I think that's really a poor man's substitute for the actual pine nuts. The pine nuts are a little bit expensive, but I think you'll find that they're really worth it. And that is true and authentic to the way it's made in Italy. Now for the last part, and my favorite part, we're gonna add in some Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Now I am admittedly a bit of a cheese snob, so I do insist that you find a good quality imported Parmigiano Reggiano, authentic. not made in America, but imported from Italy. And this one that we have here with you today has been aged for 18 months, so it's really delicious. And you're gonna notice that in every bite. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take a knife and cut off a little block of this cheese. So you don't need to grate it in, because the blender is really gonna do the work for you here. And really a little bit goes a long way. This stuff isn't exactly cheap, but you're gonna really see the difference in quality, and I assure you it's worth the purchase price. So right here, I've got maybe about a tablespoon worth of that cheese, which I just cut right off the block. No need to grate it here, save yourself some time. We're gonna go over to the blender and pulse this guy. Awesome, guys. So again, this is a matter of preference. Some people like it a little bit more coarse. Some people like to puree their pesto very smooth. Either way, totally fine for this recipe. I'm gonna just give it a couple more quick pulses. All right, guys, here we go. We've got this delicious pesto sauce that we're gonna be using with our fish today, and I'm really excited. But now it's time for us to go ahead and move over to the stove. So you need to turn your stove on to about a medium-high heat. I like to use a pan like this. It's called a rondeau. You wanna make sure it's got a little bit of an edge to it. This is gonna be where we're gonna start our risotto. Awesome, guys. We're gonna let that pan get a little bit hot. We're gonna turn this pan on here, which is where we're going to be preparing our zucchini. Again, we just want to basically preheat this pan, so we only need to turn that on to low. I've got some extra virgin olive oil right here. We're gonna need about a tablespoon and a half in there. I also have some minced garlic and shallot here. We've got about 2 tablespoons of each. So about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of minced shallot. Using a wooden spoon, or I recommend using a wooden spoon, you wanna just move that around into the hot oil. These are our aromatics. This is what's gonna give it a really rich and delicious flavor. It's not strong or overwhelming, so if you do have an aversion to onion, you should be very comfortable with this dish because it doesn't have any of the texture of onion. It just has a nice warm flavor. We've got about a cup and a half of arborio rice. Now, it is important that you use arborio rice for this recipe. That's an Italian short grain rice, and the starch content that's in the arborio rice is actually what gives it that lovely creaminess. We're gonna go ahead and start moving that around in the pan. This is a technique called parching the rice. Now, is a good time to determine if you've got enough oil in your pan. You do want to make sure that the grains of rice, the individual grains of rice, kind of each get a little bit of a coating of that olive oil on them. So if you don't have quite enough oil, you can always go ahead, just drizzle a little bit more in. You don't want to go too crazy with it though. Just want to make sure you've got a nice light coating of oil, and you guys, this smells amazing. All right, we don't want any color on that rice. So before it gets to that point, I'm gonna add in a cup of white wine. Now the smells here, they're amazing, you guys. We've got garlic, we've got shallots, and we've got the white wine in here now, and it's really making me hungry. The key to making a really good risotto is continuously stirring. So it is very important that you are dedicated to your risotto, especially in this first phase of the cooking process. As we stir those grains of rice around in the pan, they're gonna release the starch. Again, that's what's gonna really create that delicious, creamy texture. All right, so we've almost evaporated all of that liquid out of the pan. That's exactly what we want to do. And we're going to move into our second phase with the risotto, which is using stock. Now, today I have chicken stock. If you're making this for a vegan or vegetarian guest, you can easily swap that out for a veg stock or a mushroom stock. It will still taste amazing, and your vegan friends will be very impressed that you were able to create something so wonderful for them. I have 1 quart in total of stock, and I'm not going to put that all in at once. We're going to slowly incorporate this in phases into our risotto with continuous stirring. That'll give us a great creamy texture at the end. All right, guys, I'm gonna reduce the heat on this a little bit. We're gonna go down to about a medium heat, about a 4 or 5 on your stove if you've got numbers. And then that's going to go ahead, rest a little bit, incorporate more of that stock into there. And while that's happening, over here in this pan that we have preheated, we're going to put in our zucchini. So I've got this really beautiful organic zucchini. It is that time of year. I love to cook in season. So if you're looking for something that's seasonal, it's summertime, I would definitely go with zucchini. And it is something that they serve traditionally in Italy. I was able to travel out there not too long ago, but before the Corona pandemic caused a lot of the shutdowns, I was out in Italy really refining my craft and learning more about the culinary traditions and history of Italy. And zucca or zucchini is very commonly used throughout all of Italy. So using about another tablespoon of olive oil, we're going to go ahead and start to saute our zucchini. So you hear that sizzle in there? That's important. That's why we preheat our pan. At this time, we're gonna go ahead and season everything. We do wanna season as we go. So into our risotto, a little bit of salt. Into our zucchini, a little bit of salt. We have a really lovely salmon that we're working with today. And I'm also gonna go ahead and use a little bit of the sea salt on the salmon. All right, guys, stuff's really starting to happen here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just saute. You can be a little bit aggressive with the salt on the zucchini, so I'm gonna put a pinch more in there because it does tend to really kind of soak that in and soak it up. So we just wanna make sure it's very flavorful and well seasoned. We're starting to see a little bit of color developing here on the zucchini, and if we peek back at our risotto, it's moving along really nicely. That first bit of the stock that we put in there is starting to absorb in there really well. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put in a bit more stock. We don't wanna let this thing dry out, guys, okay? That's really important. Don't wanna let it get dry. We don't want it sticking. We wanna keep continuously moving this in the pan. And this is one, again, you can make this a day ahead. So it's really no stress, or it relieves a lot of the stress of entertaining if you can do some advanced preparation. And risotto is definitely one of those things where you can make it a day in advance and reheat it in the pan with some chicken stock, and your guests will never know that you didn't make it straight away. Okay, we're starting to get really nice color developing on our zucchini. I'm gonna go ahead and add some pepper. A few twists of that there. Then we're gonna go over to our salmon and season that. We already added some salt onto here. Now we're gonna go ahead and add pepper. And I like to use Old Bay when I'm cooking fish. You don't have to do this, but I think it adds a little bit of depth. I've got about a tablespoon here, and again, I'm just gonna sprinkle that all over the fish. All right, guys, here we go. Gonna move our zucchini to the back burner and move forward our pan for the salmon. We're gonna get this a little bit higher. So you want to be rocking at about a 7 or so, like a medium-high heat. And then we're going to add in olive oil here to the pan. About 2 tablespoons here on the olive oil. And you don't have to use olive oil for this part. You can use a higher heat oil if you'd like. Canola oil, vegetable oil, avocado oil, really whatever your preference is. So it is time to give this risotto another stir. I wasn't lying when I told you guys this is a commitment. You don't want to walk away from it for too long. So I have this beautiful Atlantic salmon here. I did remove the skin. You want to make sure you do take the skin off for this particular recipe. You want to make sure you don't have any pin bones in there. You don't want your guests finding one of those. And always place the fish away from you as you're putting it into the pan in case any of the oil comes up out of the pan. You don't want to be going this way. You always want to go that way. Okay, guys? All right, guys. So we want to cook our salmon for about 8 minutes on the first side. And that's going to give it a nice crispness. Golden brown color is what we're looking for. We're going to go ahead and flip this over. We need to cook that for another 5 to 6 minutes on this side. Now is the time where we're going to go ahead and, guess what? Stir the risotto again. We're also going to incorporate that Parmesan cheese. Again, this is the same Parmigiano Reggiano that we used in our pesto sauce. This time you do have to grate it, guys, okay? So we've got about a half a cup of Parmigiano Reggiano right here. Gonna go ahead and get that in there. There certainly is no rule on how much Parmesan cheese you can put in this. So if you like it a little richer, you can add a little bit more if you like. And again, if you're making this for a friend or family member who is vegan, you're gonna omit that from the recipe. I know that there are some pretty decent vegan substitutes out there these days. If you wanna go ahead and do that, go for it. If not, that's okay. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and start plating here very soon. As soon as the salmon cooks through, we're gonna go ahead and get things plated. All right, guys, I hope you're as excited as I am to go ahead and start plating this dish. Look how beautiful and creamy this risotto turned out. Got our zucchini. You can see it's got a nice, beautiful color to it. Kind of just let that fall over your risotto. And our beautiful pan-seared salmon here. We're gonna go ahead and just rest that right on top. Go ahead and just clean up our plate here a little bit. Great. Now, for that pesto sauce that we made earlier, you can get creative with this. If you want to just kind of give it a little bit on top, that's totally fine. If you want to drizzle it all over the place, that's cool too. It's totally up to you. And then some fresh lemon just to top that off and impress your guests, right? It's the little things. All right, guys, I can't wait to dig into this. All right, guys, so now for the best part, dessert. We're gonna be making a really delicious raspberry tiramisu today. We're gonna start off with some heavy whipping cream right here, and we're gonna add that to our bowl. I've got a pint of whipping cream here, and I've got also a cup of confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar, however you like to call it. And I'm just gonna sprinkle that a little bit in here, not all of it right now, because I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever dumped a bunch of confectioner's sugar in and started whipping it, it kind of goes everywhere. So we're gonna avoid doing that today. And we're just gonna start off with about a quarter of that, and we're gonna add it in incrementally as we go through the whipping process. So there's nothing really super sexy about whipping cream, but we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Okay, we're gonna add in some more of that sugar. It's getting really nice and foamy right now. Obviously, you do not have to do this by hand. You can definitely do this in a KitchenMaid or a standing mixer. If you wanna do it by hand, you can, and you'll get a great workout in the process. That looks so good. And now, we're gonna start adding in some vanilla bean. Now, you can use vanilla extract if you'd like, but I think you're gonna really notice the difference if you actually use fresh vanilla bean. I'm gonna cut that lengthwise and open this pot up here, and you see all that lovely vanilla bean on the inside. You're gonna just scrape that out with the tip of your knife, and a little bit goes a long way right here. So we're gonna scrape about half of this pod of vanilla out of here. We're gonna just scrape that into our bowl here. We're gonna go ahead and kind of fold that in. So already you can see those beautiful little speckles in there. That's the vanilla, that's the yum. We're going to add in right now our mascarpone cheese. I've got 8 ounces right here. I'm gonna just place this here in a separate mixing bowl just to get it a little bit soft, so that way it will meld really well with our whipped cream. So you do want to make sure that this is room temperature when you're working with it, so that it's nice and soft and spreadable, and we can incorporate that in here with our vanilla infused whipped cream. So far guys, we've got heavy cream, we've got confectioner's sugar, vanilla beans, and now we're adding in that mascarpone cheese. So that is quintessentially what gives you that really creamy layer of your tiramisu. And we're going to just happily marry these two together. Gonna fold it in here, and that's gonna create that really lovely cream layer in our tiramisu. So the next step here, grab yourself a Pyrex dish or baking dish. A 9x9 would be sufficient. Here, grab some raspberry preserves. I have right here, you can use seeded raspberry preserves. This does have the seeds in it, or you can use seedless raspberry preserves. And you're really gonna take just about, I don't know, a tablespoon and a half or so. And you're gonna spread this onto the bottom of the dish, just a light kind of coating here on the bottom of your dish. The next thing we need to do is we need to grab a blender. In our blender, we're gonna add in the remaining half cup of raspberry preserves into our blender here. And then we're gonna add in our liqueur. So I really like to use Chambord in this recipe because that is a raspberry liqueur. So it really deepens that flavor of the raspberry in this dish. You don't have to use the Chambord. You can use brandy, which is traditional. I've also done it with some different things like amaretto or you know, any type of liqueur really that you like. If you want to put a different kind of flair to it, you have some freedom here to really play around and try out some different flavors. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pulse this together. Okay, we're just gonna do a quick scrape down here, obviously we want to make sure we get all that really well incorporated together, the raspberry and the liqueur. All right, guys, looking good. Moving on, we're gonna start layering in our lady fingers. So these little guys, you can find really kind of at any supermarket. If you can go to an Italian grocer, if you have one nearby you, definitely recommend supporting local businesses if you have them. And we're just gonna create a nice layer of the lady fingers in this dish. So as you can see, they don't line up perfectly, no problem. You can just break it, stick it in there and fill in those holes really easily like that. Because all of this is gonna get soaked with a combination of our raspberry infused liqueur, and we have some freshly brewed coffee right here, and we're gonna kind of marry those two together and soak our lady fingers. This is a dish that you do wanna make sure you're preparing in advance because it does take a little bit of time to set up in the refrigerator. I have a cup, 8 ounces of brewed coffee, and I'm gonna use exactly half of that on the first layer. We are gonna be doing 2 layers, and then we're gonna add some of this yummy stuff on top here. And this is gonna give it more raspberry kick. And you can just go ahead and kind of spread that around just to make sure we've got kind of an even coating in there. Really, it's gonna kind of come together through that resting process. So again, it's one that I really recommend that you prepare the day in advance, but honestly, that just makes your life easier, especially if you're entertaining. Do it the day beforehand, and it makes your life that much easier when you're expecting your company to arrive. Now, lastly, what we're gonna do is add in that layer of our super yummy vanilla bean infused mascarpone. You can just see how yummy and rich and creamy that is. And you can see all those lovely vanilla bean speckles in there, which are gonna give it just that rich vanilla flavor. You really wanna make sure you get an even coating on this guy here. And it's okay if it's a little runny or a little soft, because that again is going to get soaked up by these little lady fingers right here. So some people, they want to do the same pattern, I guess, of little lady fingers, both directions. Honestly, it doesn't matter. So we're just gonna freestyle it here and get these lady fingers all in their home. You can see here, we have this beautiful layering effect happening. Now, before we add in our final layer of cream, we have reserved again that half cup of coffee. Pour that on there. More of our raspberry infused liqueur. Now, we don't want to use all of this. We want to use most of it, okay? We are going to reserve a little bit for when we're plating this dish because it actually makes a really beautiful dessert sauce. Again, just kind of work that in to those lady fingers there. And then that final layer of our cream. So hopefully you've reserved the right amount. It's not really something you can measure per se, but you do want to make sure you do 2 layers, 50% each direction on each layer. And you want to make sure that that's a nice and smooth, even coating on our cream. We're gonna go all the way up to the edge, guys, okay? And then the last part, cocoa powder. And just go ahead and sift that on there. You can do a light sprinkling, or if you're really a chocolate lover like myself, we're gonna kind of get a little heavy on there because why not? It's delicious. And then this guy needs to go into the refrigerator. You can leave it uncovered. You can cover it with aluminum foil or plastic wrap as well. But you do want to let it rest and let those flavors absorb for a good 8 hours, but as I said before, I recommend doing this one the day ahead. So we're gonna go ahead and refrigerate this guy. All right guys, so remember how we wanted to save some of that sauce that we made for our tiramisu? That is a really lovely sauce, which we can use to plate this dish, give it a little extra pizzazz. You can put this in a squeezy bottle and make it look really pretty. Not gonna do that right now just because I'm more excited about eating this. You're gonna love this. Your friends and family are gonna love this. You're gonna love how easy it was. All right, guys, that's all we have for today. So we put together a really amazing bruschetta, a salmon with risotto, and of course that yummy raspberry tiramisu that's gonna knock your guests' socks off. Again, my name was Sasha. I had such a great time with you today. If you'd like to check out more about me and my company, visit our website, www.artisanpersonalchefs.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Sasha Cooks AZ. We'll see you again next time.